Welcome to the Did Joseph Smith Have a Drinking Problem video. Isaiah 28:7 says, "The priest and the prophet have erred through strong drink. They are swallowed up of wine. They are out of the way through strong drink." Now, does this apply to the prophet Joseph Smith? Joseph Smith said, "I do not want you to think that I am very righteous, for I am not." This in his History of the Church, May 21st, 1843. Eliza R. Snow, the plural wife of Joseph Smith and Brigham Young, wrote an interesting hymn about the word of wisdom. It says, "That the children may live long and be beautiful and strong, tea and coffee and tobacco they despise, drink no liquor, and they eat but very little meat." Eliza R. Snow lived from 1804 to 1887. We're not sure when this hymn was written. Okay, Joseph Smith said, "The elders then presented the first presidency with 3 servers of glasses filled with wine in order to bless. It was then passed around in order, then the cake in the same order. Our hearts were made glad until we had taken our fill." So that sounds like they had more than just a small amount. Our hearts were made glad until we had taken our fill, and joy filled every bosom. Joseph Smith, History of the Church. Okay, Charles Mackay had the following to say about Joseph. "If we can credit his own words and the testimony of eyewitnesses, then he, Joseph Smith, was at the same time the vicegerent, which means an earthly representative of God, and also a tavern keeper, a prophet of Jehovah, and a base libertine, which means a person without morals, especially in sexual matters, a libertine, and a slave to his own base, unbridled passions, a mayor of a city, and a miserable bar-room fiddler, which means swindler. Fiddler means swindler." This is Charles Mackay, The Mormons or Latter-day Saints, A Contemporary History, 1851. Okay, Jules Remy and Julius Brenchley had the following to say about Joseph. "Among the numerous vices attributed to Joseph Smith is drunkenness. He one day said to some persons who expressed astonishment at a prophet getting intoxicated," and this is Joseph Smith's comment, "It is necessary in order to prevent my disciples from adoring me as a god. Several elders have gotten drunk without confessing it. I got in the same state in order to show them how disgusting it is, and to set them a good example by confessing my sin." This is Jules Remy and Julius Brenchley in their work, A Journey to Great Salt Lake City, 1861. Joseph Smith rebuked, which means got mad at, I guess, Elder William O. Clark for enjoining sanctity, solemnity, and temperance. So he got in trouble for being temperate, basically being too strict, not taking a drink, being a teetotaler. Temperance is basically abstinence from alcoholic drink. And William got in trouble from Joseph Smith for abstinence in the rigid sectarian style. And this is in Joseph Smith's History of the Church, 1841. So Joseph Smith got in trouble a few times for being drunk among the saints. And he said basically, well, it's okay because it was okay for Noah in the Bible. And then he gave the following example, which is referring to the curse of Ham for laughing at his drunken father. Joseph Smith justified Noah as a righteous man, yet he drank wine and became intoxicated. So he's still righteous even though he drank wine and became intoxicated. "The Lord did not forsake him in consequence thereof, for he retained all the power of his priesthood. And when he was accused by Canaan, he cursed him by the priesthood which he held, notwithstanding he was drunk." So that could kind of justify some of Joseph Smith's own behavior and being drunk in public because it was okay for Noah. And if you made fun of Noah, then you got cursed. Charles Walker Journal, Utah Historical Society. So what does the Word of Wisdom actually say about drinking alcohol? Well, it's in D&C 89. It came out in February 27th, 1833. It was a revelation, and it says, "Thus saith the Lord unto you," so it's fairly serious, but it's not by commandment or constraint. So there is a little wiggle room in Joseph Smith's time And then later on, leaders of the church really tightened it up and made it basically a commandment later on. So let's read this. It says, a word of wisdom for the benefit of the council of high priests assembled in Kirtland, that's Ohio, and the church, and also the saints in Zion, to be sent greeting, not by commandment or constraint, but by revelation and the word of wisdom. So revelation is still pretty strong. So if it's a revelation, you probably don't want to go against it, even though Joseph Smith did. Showing forth the order and will of God in the temporal salvation of all the saints in the last days, given for a principle with promise, adapted to the capacity of the weak and the weakest of all saints. I'm not sure what that means, adapted to the capacity of the weak. I don't know what that means. Who are or can be called the saints. Behold, verily, thus saith the Lord. So the Lord is saying this. That's fairly serious. Thus saith the Lord unto you, in consequence of evils and designs which do and will exist in the hearts of conspiring men in the last days. What are those evil designs? Not sure. There was some gossip about wine being poisoned by the enemies, or by the Gentiles. Maybe that's what they're talking about. I have warned you and forewarned you by giving unto you this word of wisdom by revelation. So again, there it is. It's a revelation. Now, don't you want to follow the revelations? That inasmuch as any man drinketh wine or strong drink among you, behold, it is not good. And if you remember the first slide, Isaiah basically said the same thing, and there's other passages in the Bible that say the same thing as well. Neither is it meet in the sight of your Father. So the Father in heaven doesn't like it. So that's fairly serious. Only in assembling yourselves together to offer up your sacraments before him. So it's okay to have a little bit of wine, I guess, in your sacraments. Taking the sacrament, or maybe in some temple ordinances, which happened in the Kirtland Temple dedication. Okay, so sacraments before him, and behold, this should be wine, yea, pure wine of the grape of the vine, and of your own make. Maybe again, so it can't be poisoned. And again, strong drinks are not for the belly, but are for the washing of your bodies. They're kind of cleansing. You can wash in them. So that is the word of wisdom we have here. Here's another statement. It is a pity for his reputation, Joseph Smith, among the straight-laced of the community with whom he was compelled to associate, that as a young man the prophet did not continue to practice the abstinence from liquor, with which he is so heroically credited as a boy of 8. So there's a story that he had an operation, I believe, on his leg, and it was going to be quite painful, and Joseph Smith refused liquor. So that's what his mom, Lucy Mack Smith, said. I kind of doubt it, being that his father was basically a heavy alcohol user, and it was pretty common to be used as medicine and as a pain reliever in medical operations. So maybe Lucy Mack was just trying to make Joseph Smith look good. And here, M.R. Werner is saying that he did not continue to practice the abstinence from liquor. For if we can believe the testimony of his neighbors, I think that's the Stafford family, and we have their affidavits in this video. Okay, so according to the neighbors, the prophet was frequently seen about Palmyra drunk. This is M.R. Werner, biography, Brigham Young, 1925. Here is a statement by I. Woodbridge Riley. What took place between the first and second visions was described by Joseph Smith as the weakness of youth, foolish errors, divers temptations, and gratifications of appetites that were offensive in the sight of God. Stripped of verbiage, this means, for one thing, drunkenness. This is I. Woodbridge Riley, the founder of Mormonism, 1903. Okay, here's a statement in Lou B. Cake. Old Mormon manuscript found, Peepstone Joe exposed. We're not sure if this is true, but it's kind of interesting. In September 21st, 1823, Joseph Smith got drunk, swore, lied, and swindled, contrary to revelation. Joe claims that while in bed this drunken September 21st, an angel came to him, told him the history of the ancient inhabitants of America. Whether it was angel or alcohol that gave Joe inspiration is the question. For although drunk on September 21st, yet on September 22nd, he claims that he found the plates in the place to which he was directed. So he was drunk the day before, and then the next day he went and found the plates. This may or may not be true, and you could say that about all these accounts. We don't know, but we just know that there's a lot of them about Joseph Smith being drunk. And this is Old Mormon Manuscript found, Peepstone Joe exposed, 1899. Okay, a statement by Colonel J.M. Reed. In September 1823, he, Joseph Smith, fell from grace and lied as usual and was frequently intoxicated. Colonel J.M. Reed, The Old Settlers, Sketches and Anecdotes of the Old Settlers and Newcomers, The Mormon Bandits and Day-Night Band, 1876. Okay, we have a statement from one of Joseph Smith's neighbors in Palmyra, and he said, when intoxicated, he, Joseph Smith, was very quarrelsome, testified David Stafford, a Palmyra neighbor. While at work one time, a dispute arose between us. He having drunk a little too freely, and some hard words passed between us. And as usual with him at such times, it was for fighting. So a lot of these accounts state Joseph Smith getting drunk, and then he liked to scrap, wrestle and fight. But this is the statement from David Stafford, a Palmyra neighbor, when Joe was growing up. Eber D. Howe, Mormonism Unveiled, 1840. Okay, we have another Palmyra neighbor from the Stafford family. This is Barton Stafford. He gave an affidavit about Joseph Smith, and he testified, Joseph Smith Sr. was a noted drunkard. That's Joseph Smith's father. And most of the family followed his example. And Joseph Smith Jr. especially, who was very much addicted to intemperance. So he had a habitual alcohol problem, basically. He one day, while at work in my father's field, got quite drunk on a composition of cider, molasses, and water. Doesn't sound very good. Finding his legs to refuse their office, he leaned upon the fence and hung for some time. At length, recovering again, he fell to scuffling with one of the workmen. So there's more fighting here, who tore his shirt nearly off of him. His wife, I guess who was Emma Smith, who was at our house on a visit, appeared very much grieved at his conduct, and to protect his back from the rays of the sun and conceal his nakedness, threw her shawl over his shoulders, and in that plight escorted the prophet home. As an evidence of his piety and devotion when intoxicated, he frequently made his religion the topic of conversation. This is Eber D. Howe again, Mormonism Unveiled, 1834. Okay, another affidavit from a member of the Stafford family. This is C.R. Stafford. This family was neighbors to Joseph Smith and his family in Palmyra. And he stated, I saw old Joseph Smith, his wife, and Mrs. Rockwell baptized by Prophet Joe Smith. I have seen Joe in drunken fights. Father and son were frequently drunk. So, like father, like son. This is Arthur B. Deming, Naked Truths About Mormonism, 1888. And this statement probably shows up in Eber D. Howe's book as well. Okay, here's a statement from Danford Booth. I, Danford Booth, knew Joseph Smith personally to some extent. I saw him frequently, knew well his reputation, and he was a lazy, drinking fellow, and loose in his habits in every way. The source for this is Clark Braden, E. L. Kelly, Public Discussion of the Issues Between the Reorganized Church and the Church of Christ, Disciples, 1884. Okay, we have a statement by Dr. McIntyre, the Smith family physician, a pretty good source, I would think, said that Joseph Smith once received a beating for stealing sugar while intoxicated. Sounds like something a young man would do, steal sugar while intoxicated. And that while he dressed his bruises, the Dr. McIntyre dressing his bruises, Joseph declared that he had had a fight with the devil. So that's how creative Joseph was. He could come up with excuses on the spot. So he's saying basically, no, I didn't steal sugar, but I had a fight with the devil. Again, this is the Braden and Kelly source. Okay, we have an interesting statement here because it talks about people being paid for doing work in whiskey, cider, and strong drink. So they'd actually use it as a method of exchange to pay people. And Miss Horace Eaton said whiskey was the impetus and the reward for Joseph Smith working. So he's basically working and being paid in whiskey. Regarding the Smith family quests for buried treasure, she reported that father and brothers, vagabonds, neighbors, all who could be hired with cider and strong drink. That's interesting. They get paid in cider and strong drink, or diluted with extravagant lying promises. All these people were organized into a digging phalanx. And again, this is the Braden and Kelly source. According to Thurlow Weed, publisher of the Telegraph, I guess a newspaper, Joseph Smith passed his time at taverns and stores in Palmyra. This is a letter to Ellen Dickinson, April 12, 1880. And according to Pomeroy Tucker, who wrote the book Origin, Rise, and Progress of Mormonism in 1867, the Smith family were a whiskey-drinking, shiftless, irreligious race of people. Okay, the editor of the Rural New Yorker in Rochester, February 13, 1857. As a young man, Joseph Smith's prospects were anything but cheering. He was engaged in no steady employment and might often have been found lounging around the bar rooms of Palmyra in company with persons as worthless and idle as himself. Okay, a statement by the Reverend Jesse Townsend of Palmyra. I begin with the leader Joe, who is Joseph Smith, as he is and always has been called here. For the 10 years that I have known anything of him, he has been a person of questionable character, of intemperate habits. Intemperate habits, that just basically means excessive indulgence in alcohol. And again, this is the Pomeroy Tucker book. Okay, a statement by Dr. Williams, a physician in New York, said that the father, old Joseph Smith Sr., was an irreligious and drunken fellow, and the mother was little better than the husband. There were 7 children, and when I first met with your prophet, Joseph Smith, in 1825, he was about 21 years of age, and notorious, like others of his family, as a money digger, and withal as a drunken, lying, and dissipated profligate, which means degenerate. Robert Richards, The Californian Caruso, 1854. Okay, a statement by Frederick G. Mather. The Smith family drank freely both in the Susquehanna and in the Harpersville neighborhoods. Joseph Smith by nature was peaceably disposed, but when he had taken too much liquor, he was inclined to fight. So another account that he liked to fight when he drank. And this was with or without provocation. Again, Frederick G. Mather, The Early Days of Mormonism, Lippincott's Magazine, 1880. And we have Levi Lewis, who was Emma Smith's cousin, reported that saw him, Joseph Smith, intoxicated 3 different times while he was composing the Book of Mormon. Again, this is Eber D. Howe, Mormonism Unveiled, 1834. Okay, a statement by W.H. McIntosh. Few would have thought that this awkward, drenched, and drunken young man was destined to a worldwide reputation as the originator and leader of a sect numbering thousands of followers. W.H. McIntosh, History of Ontario County, New York, 1876. So, the Reverend Clark Braden charged that the saints used to have love feasts in which wine was passed around in buckets, each one helping himself to all he wanted with gourd or dipper, and pictured above is a gourd dipper. Kind of interesting. The old blesser, old Joseph Smith, often got so blessed drunk that he could not get out of his chair. Again, this is Braden and Kelly source. Almon W. Babbitt, a 70, after being accused of breaking the word of wisdom, said that he had taken the liberty of breaking the word because of the example of President Joseph Smith Jr. and others. So he saw Joseph Smith Jr. doing it, so why couldn't he do it? History of the Church, Volume 2. And we have a statement by Chauncey G. Webb. After remarking that good whiskey could be purchased in Kirtland for only 25 cents a gallon, Chauncey G. Webb said, "No wonder that Joseph Smith sometimes went to bed with his boots on, or that he slept as sometimes he did in a ditch. He was a right jolly prophet, no sanctimonious humbug about him. Dr. W. Weil Wilhelm Ritter von Wymetal, Mormon Portraits is the source in 1886. The prophet was fond of fun, frolic, and brandy. J.M. Sharp Journal, Yale University, 1843. Okay, so it's good to be the leader because you don't have to follow your own counsel. You run things and you are the leader. So according to the history of the church here, no official member in this church is worthy to hold an office. Again, no official member in this church is worthy to hold an office after having the word of wisdom properly taught him, and he, the official member, neglecting to comply with or obey it, which decision the council confirmed by vote. So Joseph could use this against anybody he didn't like, anybody that was rebellious, in excommunication proceedings. He could bring up some charges and then also add in, well, he doesn't keep the word of wisdom, so, he can't hold a calling or an office. But Joseph Smith didn't have to follow the guidance himself because he ran things. Okay, according to M.R. Werner in the biography Brigham Young, 1925, which is an excellent Brigham Young biography, probably the best one out there, many of the elders are reported to have got inordinately drunk that night, which was at the Kirtland Temple dedication. They got drunk on sacramental liquor, and the prophet is said to have needed considerable bracing up before he could face his wife, Emma. Okay, another comment. I heard many Mormons who attended the dedication or the endowment of the Kirtland Temple say that very many people became drunk. Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith vomited in the pulpit. Again, Joseph Smith vomited in the pulpit. Others vomited in the pews because they were fasting for a long time. They drank a bunch of wine. The wine might have even been spiked with something like magic mushrooms. We don't know for sure. And Joseph Smith is puking. This is Arthur B. Deming, Naked Truths About Mormonism, 1888. Okay, another statement about the Kirtland Temple dedication. This is Benjamin Winchester. He said that ceremony ended in a drunken frolic, one of the worst I ever saw. Joseph Smith became beastly intoxicated, and his father and his brother Hiram begged that the wine should be taken away. I did not know Joseph to be what is termed a common sot, which means a habitual drunkard, but that was not the last time that I saw him intoxicated. Benjamin Winchester, Primitive Mormonism, The Daily Tribune in Salt Lake City, 1889. Okay, a statement by Harry B. Beardsley. Some Mormon writers attempt to make the prophet a teetotaler, which means a person who never drinks alcohol. But in the face of testimony of his contemporaries, their efforts fail. At Kirtland, Joseph Smith apparently was circumspect in his drinking, taking his tipple, which means habitual drink of alcohol, at his own home or the homes of close friends. So that was in Kirtland, Ohio. But by the time the Mormons reached Nauvoo, Illinois, however, Joseph Smith's inhibitions had vanished. He patronized his own barroom in the back of his store, so he had a barroom in the back of his store, and the barrooms of Montrose across the river, so he would go to nearby towns and drink. He was frequently drunk in public, nearly always so on holidays and festive occasions, and he was proud of his capacity for liquor. This in Harry B. Beardsley's book, Joseph Smith and His Mormon Empire, 1931. Okay, so Joseph Smith, the mayor of Nauvoo, he said, I was in the city council, and I moved that any person in the city of Nauvoo be at liberty to sell vinous liquors in any quantity, subject to the city ordinance. So he helped to pass a law that people in the city of Nauvoo be at liberty to sell vinous liquors in any quantity. History of the Church, Volume 4. Okay, so Joseph Smith, the mayor of Nauvoo, wanted to be able to sell spirits or alcoholic beverages, so he helped to get an ordinance passed. It says, be it ordained by the city council of Nauvoo that the mayor, Joseph Smith, of the city, be and is hereby authorized to sell or give spirits of any quantity. And spirits are basically just alcoholic beverages. Okay, of any quantity as he in his wisdom shall judge to be for the health and comfort or convenience of such travelers or other persons as shall visit his house from time to time. So he wanted to be able to sell these, make money. So he just helped to pass the ordinance. And the ordinance was passed December 12th, 1843, signed by Joseph Smith, the mayor. This is in the history of the church. Okay, so in Joseph Smith's diary, June 1st, 1844, at 1 p.m. I rode out with Dr. Richards and O.P. Rockwell, Orrin Porter Rockwell. Drank a glass of beer at Moser's. This was Frederick G. Moser Grog Shop and Grocery. This is recorded in the Millennial Star 23, page 720. But in the history of the church, this statement that he drank a glass of beer at Moser's was censored/deleted. Okay, again in Joseph Smith's own diary, he said, called at the office and drank a glass of wine with Sister Janetta Richards. This was Mrs. Willard Richards' wife, and they are pictured above. The wine was made by her mother in England, and Joseph Smith reviewed a portion of the conference minutes, so he could have a little alcohol but still work. Joseph Smith in the history of the church. Okay, a letter of Benjamin F. Johnson, where he said that Joseph Smith was partial to a well-supplied table, and he did not always refuse the wine. He did not always refuse the wine that maketh the heart glad, and you have to drink a bit to make your heart glad. This was a letter of Benjamin F. Johnson to George S. Gibbs, 1903. Okay, this is a really good story. It's from Joseph Smith III. He was the son of Joseph Smith and Emma Smith. And he said when Emma, that's his mother, returned, she found installed in the keeping room of the hotel, that's where they lived, they called it the mansion house or the hotel. When she got home, she found a bar with counter, shelves, bottles, glasses for a fully equipped tavern bar. She told me to go and tell him, Joseph Smith, that she wished to see him. And then Emma says, how does it look, she asked, for the spiritual head of a religious body to be keeping a hotel in which is a room fitted out as a liquor selling establishment? He reminded her that all taverns had their bars at which liquor was sold or dispensed. And then Mother Emma replied, emphatically clear that you can have some other person look after things here. As for me, I will take my children and go across to the old house and stay there, for I will not have them raised up under such conditions as this arrangement imposes upon us, not have them mingle with the kind of men who frequent such a place. You are at liberty to make your choice. Either that bar goes out of this house or we will. Get rid of that bar, basically. It did not take Father long to make the choice, for he replied immediately, very well, Emma, I will have it removed at once, and he did. But we also know he had a tavern in his store, so I guess that was something different. Mary Audentia Smith Anderson, Joseph Smith III, that's Joseph and Emma's son, who became the leader of the reorganized church. Joseph Smith III and the Restoration, 1952. So when it came to the attention of the prophet Joseph Smith that some of the brethren were breaking the word of wisdom and drinking alcohol, what did he do? Well, according to his diary, June 27, 1843, it was reported to me, Joseph Smith, that some of the brethren had been drinking that day in violation of the word of wisdom. I called the brethren in and investigated the case, and was satisfied that no evil had been done, and gave them a couple of dollars with directions to replenish the bottle. So he said, it's no big deal, and here's some money. You can go and get more liquor. Replenish the bottle in order to stimulate them in the fatigues of their sleepless journey, which I'm not sure what that means. Millennial Star, it's recorded, but then in the history of the church, much of this information was censored and deleted. So what happened when Theodore Turley asked Joseph Smith if he could build a brewery? And I guess this was in Nauvoo. Joseph Smith, told Theodore that I had no objection to his building a brewery. So come on in and build it. This is in history of the church. An advertisement in the Nauvoo Neighbor, December 27, 1843. So a few months later, announced that a Nauvoo brewery, T. Turley, begs leave to inform the inhabitants of Nauvoo and vicinity that he has constantly on hand a supply of ale, beer, and yeast of the best quality for sale at his brewery. So Joseph gave approval of it, and then it was built, and it was on the corner of Hyde and Water Street. And here is that ad, which was in the Nauvoo Neighbor. Nauvoo Brewery, T. Turley begs leave. Okay, in the works of Captain Frederick Marryat, it says that Joseph Smith was well known to be a drunken vagabond. Okay, so this account is by Thomas Sharp. It's an editorial in the newspaper Warsaw Signal. And Thomas says, even the prophet himself, although a seeming devotee of the temperance cause, is a better friend to Bacchus than to any other god. Now, Bacchus is the god of wine, except perhaps Plutus, who is the god of wealth. So he's saying that he likes those gods better than any other god, the god of wine and the god of wealth. We have heard of three sprees. We have heard of 3 sprees of his in the last 10 months. The second was on board the steamer Nauvoo in her excursion to Bloomington last fall. On this occasion, His Holiness drank whiskey until he found himself on his back, feeling upwards for the ground, so says our informant. The third was last week. On this occasion, it does not appear that Joseph Smith was exactly drunk, but it seems strange to see the prophet of the Lord at the head of a champagne party, crying lustily, quote, "Take away the empty bottles and bring on the full ones," end quote. So this is Thomas Sharp, Warsaw Signal, Temperance Among the Mormons, 1841. Okay, an account by Reverend Henry Caswall. In September 1841, the prophet Joseph Smith, being in Montrose, became intoxicated at this shop. While in this condition, he told the bystanders that he could drink them all drunk, and requested the shopkeeper to treat all his friends at his expense. Reverend Henry Caswell, The City of the Mormons, or 3 Days at Nauvoo, 1842. Okay, another account by Caswall. Joseph Smith gave a party at Monmouth, and after a regular frolic with his lawyers and friends, became thoroughly intoxicated. On being asked how it was that he, a prophet of the Lord, could get drunk, he replied that it was necessary that he should do so in order to prevent his followers from worshiping him as a god. So he couldn't be too righteous, had to be a little bit more down to earth. And this again is the Caswall account. Okay, another account by Caswall. While intoxicated at Montrose, he, Joseph Smith, was heard by several persons saying to himself, "I am a prophet." Profit, I am a prophet, repeating the letters in solemn succession. And then about 2 years since, at a political convention held in Nauvoo, the prophet became intoxicated again and was led home by his brother Hiram. This is again the Caswall account. Okay, another diary account of Joseph Smith on June 10th, 1841. He stated that his tavern bill at Monmouth, Illinois, came to $160, and that he thought the barkeeper an unconscionable fellow. So you can see, you can go from Nauvoo to Monmouth by car nowadays in 1 hour, 8 minutes. This is in the Millennial Star. However, the word tavern was deleted in the official history of the church. So it could be any other kind of bill, I guess, but not a tavern bill. Okay, here's another account. I've seen Joseph Smith. He is a great blubber-mouthed fellow, a knave, which I guess is dishonest, a drunkard, a mean, ignorant fellow. This is from WSB, A Visit to Nauvoo in the Universalist Union. That's probably a paper. April 27th, May 4th, 1844. Another account in Wilhelm Ritter von Wymetal's Mormon Portraits. He, Joseph Smith, used to preach that, "Brethren and sisters, I got drunk last week and I fell in the ditch. I suppose you heard of it. I am awfully sorry, but I felt very good." He used to get drunk on military occasions after the parades of the Nauvoo Legion. Again, Mormon Portraits, 1886. Okay, here's an account from William Law. He was in the first presidency with Joseph Smith. I only saw him drunk once. I found Joseph Smith and Hiram at a place where they kept quantities of wine, and I remember that Joseph drank heavily, and that I talked to Hiram begging him to take his brother away. This was a Dr. W. Weil interview with William Law, March 30th, 1887. Okay, an account by Miss T.B.H. or Fanny Stenhouse. All who are acquainted with the prophet Joseph Smith know that he gets most gloriously drunk, occasionally, but he says he only does this to try the faith of the saints and show them that he is fallible like other men. This is in her book Tell It All, The Story of a Life's Experience in Mormonism, 1874. Okay, again from TBH or Fanny Stenhouse. I recollect once that I was taking tea at Joseph Smith's house. Joe was in a very glorious state. He was so intoxicated indeed that he could scarcely hold up his head. The elect lady Emma having left the room in disgust at her husband's beastly state. And again, this is in Tell It All, 1874. Okay, and one more from TBH Stenhouse. I recollect upon another occasion that Joseph Smith happened in tolerably drunk, so I guess he was tolerable at that point, and commenced discoursing in a very low and vulgar manner. I don't know what he was saying, but much to the annoyance of the ladies, the reader will perceive that Joe has not that regard for temperance that his vote on the city temperance ordinance would seem to indicate. So I guess at one point Joseph Smith was pretending to be temperate and pretending to make the city of Nauvoo city of temperance. All right, this is a pretty hilarious one. It's an account by Robert Richards. The prophet Joseph Smith would get pretty hilarious when he would drink. And the account says, having occasion to cross the river to Montrose about the purchase of some cattle. So that was just across the river from Nauvoo in Iowa. I'll show you a map on the next slide because it seemed like Joseph went there a lot to drink. I heard a voice which sounded like that of the prophet, and looking over a fence, I saw Joseph Smith himself lying alone on the grass with a whiskey bottle by his side and decidedly far gone in a state of intoxication. He was talking and laughing and evidently congratulating himself in a soliloquy on the success of his devices. I am a prophet, he said, a profitable prophet indeed I am. Prophetical prophets are good prophets, very good prophets, capital good prophets. I'll be hanged if they ain't. The saints are a pack of fools, but I am a prophet, a profitable prophet, a prophetical, prophesying, profitable prophet. Hard to say. What was Muhammad compared with me? He was a jackass. What was Napoleon? He was a numbskull. I am a greater man than Moses. Hurrah, hip, 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 hurrah. Okay, so here's that map. You see Nauvoo here, and Montrose is just across the river in Iowa. So if there was a riverboat, which I assume there was, Joseph Smith would get on it and go over to Montrose and drink, and then maybe some of the saints would not see him. Okay, an account here in John Bowes' Mormonism Exposed, 1851. On a certain evening, he, William Arrowsmith, and his wife, along with Joseph Smith and Nancy Marinda Hyde, were guests at his mother-in-law's home, where they spent the night. He told that Joseph was a drunken fellow and that he slept with Hyde's wife while he, Arrowsmith, was under the same roof. And we know that Joseph Smith liked the ladies. Another account here in the History of the Church, Volume 6, Mr. Augustine Spencer wrote a letter which affirms that Joseph Smith is in the habit of drinking, swearing, carousing, dancing all night, etc., and that he keeps 6 or 7 young females as wives, etc., and many other such like insinuations. Okay, so here's an account in the Millennial Star regarding the time that Joseph Smith was in the Carthage jail. That's pictured above here. Joseph Smith drank some wine in Carthage jail the day that he was killed. The guard immediately sent for a bottle of wine, pipes, and 2 small papers of tobacco, and one of the guards brought them into the jail soon after the jailer went out. Dr. Willard Richards uncorked the bottle and presented a glass to Joseph, who tasted, as also Brother Taylor and the doctor, and the bottle was then given to the guard, who turned to go out. You can see the Millennial Star 24 for the full account. In the history of the church, the fact that they were drinking wine was censored and deleted. Okay, and an account from John Taylor. He became the third prophet of the church. It's in regard to the same incident. John Taylor, who was at Carthage jail with Joseph Smith, said, "Sometime after dinner we went for some wine. It has been reported by some that this was taken as a sacrament, but it was no such thing. Our spirits were generally dull and heavy, and it was sent for to revive us. I believe we all drank of the wine," which would include Joseph, and this was on the day that Joseph Smith was killed. We have an account by Thomas Ford, who was the governor of Illinois. He said, "At times Joseph Smith drank like a sailor and swore like a pirate." And this in the History of Illinois, full account of the rise, progress, and fall of Mormonism, 1854. Okay, we have an account here by Sarah Pratt. It was the first wife of Apostle Orson Pratt. And she says in the book Mormon Portraits, again by Dr. W. Weil, "A good deal of whiskey was consumed in Nauvoo. Joseph Smith himself was often drunk. I have seen him in this state at different times. One evening one of the brethren brought Joseph to my home. He could not walk and had to be led by a helpful brother. The prophet asked me to make some strong coffee, which I did. He drank 5 cups, and when he felt that he could walk a little bit better, he went home. He dared not come before Emma in this state," because we know how Emma is. She gets after Joseph. "Joseph was no habitual drunkard, but he used to get on sprees. When drunk, he used to be awfully funny, as we saw in that Profitable Prophet slide. He sometimes went to bed with his boots on. Whenever he had been tight, which meant drunk in the old days, he used to confess it in the next Sunday's meeting. Joseph lied that he had done so to try the faith of the saints. The Lord would have a tried people." This is an account in the History of the church. They're trying to correct a statement that Martin Harris made. It says, "The council proceeded to investigate certain charges presented by Elder Rigdon against Martin Harris. One was that he told A.C. Russell, Esquire," I guess that's a lawyer, "that Joseph Smith drank too much liquor when he was translating the Book of Mormon. But, this is the correction here, Brother Harris did not tell Esquire Russell that Brother Joseph drank too much liquor while translating the Book of Mormon. But this thing occurred previous to the translating of the book." So he wasn't drunk while translating the Book of Mormon. He was drunk and drank too much liquor previous to the translating of the book. History of the Church, 226. And here's a small account by Hiram Jackway in the William H. Kelly Affidavits, 1881. "I saw Joseph Smith and his father drunk in a hayfield." Okay, so what did Brigham Young think of Joseph Smith's drunkenness and intemperance? Because I'm sure he saw him at various times drinking. And Brigham Young probably even drank with him on occasion. He says, "The doctrine that he, Joseph Smith, teaches is all that I know about the matter. Bring anything against that if you can." So try to counter his teachings, not him as a person. "As to anything else, I don't care. If he acts like a devil, he has brought forth a doctrine that will save us, if we will abide it. He may get drunk every day of his life." So it's interesting that he put that in there. He may get drunk every day of his life. "Sleep with his neighbor's wife every night," which is another interesting one because we know Joseph Smith did that. Sleep with the neighbor's wife every night. "Run horses and gamble. I do not care anything about that, for I never embrace any man in my faith." So don't look to the man, look to what he teaches, basically. "But the doctrine that he has produced will save you and me and the whole world, and if you can find fault with that, then find it." Brigham Young, 1856. Okay, so is beer against the word of wisdom? Well, there's one interpretation that you might like to make if you like to drink beer. In the word of wisdom, it says, "All grain is good for the food of man, as also the fruit of the vine," which would be wine, "and barley for all useful animals, and for mild drinks. Barley for mild drinks. So that might be beer, huh? Is beer a mild drink? If it's low alcohol, maybe so. As also other grain. So we know that Joseph Smith drank beer from time to time. We know that the modern leaders have condemned beer and say that it is now a commandment that thou shalt not drink beer. But that will do it for this video. And I thank you for watching the Did Joseph Smith Have a Drinking Problem video.